Hey, good morning. It's Eric Arnold here in the Politics Barn, Wednesday morning, the 12th of October. Well, let's talk Ukrainian war here in this episode. Read a piece here by one of my thought godfathers, if you will, Ron Paul, somebody that I follow pretty closely. He put out a piece today. I'm probably just going to read it to you. That's just an easy way for me to generate content. I don't have to think, I just read. I was impressed, or I started to follow Congressman Paul. If somewhere in the Iraq War in the mid-aught decade, pretty much that was when a lot of my neoconservative thinking changed. In other words, any thinking person basically would be along the lines of, wait a minute now, you told me we needed to go over there, kick ass, take names, kill Iraqis, because Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, and where are they? A bunch of old 1980s vintage nerve gas that they used on the Iranians that everyone already knew they had because they used it on the Iranians. That's what you found? No. That's not what you guys were talking about. That's not what you said. But of course, that was never adjudicated, was it? We all just kind of swept that under the rug. Well, we're here now. Let's just kick some ass, and kill a bunch of people. And Ron Paul said it before the war started. He said, this is all a big mistake. Stood there on the House floor, United States Congress, and said, this is a big goddamn mistake. And he was 100% right. So that's when I started thinking, maybe you ought to be listening to this guy a little more, and less to people like Lindsey Graham and Dick Cheney and those type of people. So that's where I started looking into Congressman Paul. But at any rate, in reading his piece, he brought up a name I had not heard before. There's so much going on right now, and you just can't keep up with all of it. And this I thought was an intriguing story that I just missed. A lot of you people might have heard of it. Frankly, I'm going to say if I missed it, you missed it probably too. So let me give you this. Darya Dugina, I'm going to guess that's how it's pronounced. This was a political assassination that took place on the 20th of August in Russia, right in Moscow. So he refers to her in the first paragraph. And he refers to a New York Times article that was written last week, the 5th of October, about the Dugina assassination. I'm not going to read the New York Times article because, frankly, it's just too goddamn long. I don't know why. Usually they paywall this shit and I can't get by it. But here, I was able to read all 10 million words of it. And let me give you the gist of it. U.S. believes Ukrainians were behind an assassination in Russia. That's the headline. U.S. believes Ukrainians were behind an assassination in Russia. American officials said they were not aware of the plan ahead of time for the attack that killed Darya Dugina, and that they had admonished Ukraine over it. So in other words, oh, shit, they blew her up. The Ukrainians did it. Now remember, the Ukrainians, don't remember, this is the first time you're hearing it. But the Ukrainians denied that they had anything to do with the bombing. In other words, wow, Shazam, Darya Dugina just blew up in a car. Now, who's Darya Dugina, you're saying? Who the hell is this? Apparently, she was 29 years old, female. Darya is a woman's name, apparently. 29-year-old female. Apparently, she's the daughter of some other guy named Dugina. I don't think he's elected, but then again, what does that even mean in Russia? I think he's a wheel of some type. I don't know if he's part of the Putin government or he's just a supporter of the Putin government. The internet seems to label him as a Russia ultranationalist. So I'm going to guess he's a Putin supporter of some type, that he's not, that he's pro-invasion, pro-war, pro-fuck the Ukrainians, that type of deal. And his daughter is also a player of some type. In other words, she's made she was a journalist apparently of some type. I think she worked for RT. Didn't we used to watch car crashes or something on RT before American Big Tech banned the channel? But anyway, RT, was that Russia Today? Is that what it stood for? Well, at any rate, she worked for them, publishing multiple pro-Russia pieces, of course. She's been banished by Western media as disinformation, which is just, that aggravates me to no end when you say disinformation. All it means is her information is coming from a different viewpoint than our information is. And she has a different viewpoint, of course, because she's Russian. Doesn't mean that she's lying necessarily. But then, of course, big tech, the masters of the lie, that's what you get. So at any rate, she was a player of some type. She was pro-invasion, pro-war. How much of a player she was, I think that's somewhat of an open question. Let's see, what else we got here? So I'm going to look at this New York Times piece. United States intelligence agencies believe parts of the Ukrainian government authorized the car bomb attack near Moscow. It was a car bomb that killed her. In August, it killed Darya Dugina, daughter of a prominent Russian nationalist. This is from the New York Times. An element of a covert campaign that U.S. officials fear could widen the conflict. Oh, Shazam, you think? The United States took no part in the attack. Let's just stop there. Just remember, the New York Times is the Biden administration. This is the Biden administration speaking to you. The New York Times is simply a conduit for the leftist American intelligence agencies, the Biden administration, the pro-war U.S. Western agencies that are running this war. So, either by providing intelligence or assistance, U.S. took no part in the attack, did not provide intelligence or any other assistance, officials said. American officials also said they were not aware of the operation ahead of time and would have opposed the killing had they been consulted. Afterwards, American officials admonished Ukrainian officials over the assassination, they said. All right, now let's sum up here. I mean, that gives you the gist of this piece, which then goes on for another 5,000 words. I exaggerate, but at any rate. Basically, the Americans now are putting it out that, hey, we didn't this wasn't our idea. We didn't do it. Now, I don't know exactly what they're hoping to achieve by this. A simplistic reading of this would be they're trying to communicate with Putin saying, hey, blow something up over there. Don't hit us. We weren't involved in this. Now, did you cut off the funding to the Ukrainians, United States government? No, of course not. So we continue to send them, funding and weapons and whatnot. But it basically is painting the Ukrainians as loose cannons. In other words, we don't know what these guys are going to do. Hey, not our fault. Whoa, Shazam. And if I'm Putin, it's like, wait a minute, you're the ones giving them the goddamn money. And then when they go off and do something half-cocked, we're supposed to get mad at them? And plus, remember, this is the assumption that they're saying. We had nothing to do with it. We all know Joe Biden lies like a rug, so, they very well may have had something to do with it. Very well may have. Now, let's not, again, go down the path here where it's like, oh, this was some kind of horrible, immoral crime that was committed by blowing up poor Darya in her car. It's a war, right? And she was a player. I mean, this would be akin, if you believe that Putin is Hitler, so you got a chance to knock off Goebbels and his daughter, maybe you're going to do it. So, and you're not going to sleep, you're going to sleep well after you do it too. So let's not get all wrapped up in, ooh, wow, that was horrible. I guess that just depends on, how horrible you think that was. This I view more along the lines of they're just trying to maybe send the Ukrainians a message that, hey, we know you guys did it. Don't lie to our faces when you're saying you didn't do it. In other words, that could be read a couple different ways. In other words, you guys are getting a little out over your skis. You need to dial it back a little bit here. I mean, just dial it back a little bit. Now, this article was written before. Yeah, I'm almost certain I'm right on that. This article was published before the bridge blew up in Crimea. So that didn't work. Whatever little subtle signaling to the Ukrainians there to dial it back, that didn't work. If that's what this was all about. Now, another thing this could be is a subtle signal to the Ukrainians that, hey, cut us in. We're partners on this deal. Let us know what you're up to. Maybe we could help you blow more shit up. Maybe we could have like 8 car bombs go off instead of just 1. Maybe we could get Putin himself if you guys trust us and cut us in. That could be what this is too, possibly. They're maybe signaling that. But yeah, I just found this interesting that the American government would put this out there that, I mean, the other part is it pretty much signals to me the Russians know goddamn well who blew that car up. And they've got proof of who blew that car up. So maybe that's where they fear perhaps not every country in this world has taken a hard and fast position on this war yet. So maybe we fear looking like lying assholes, basically, to some of these neutral nations when the Russians dump out the receipts and say, hey, here's the proof that these assholes in Ukraine did it, and we think the Americans put them up to it. And so this is the Americans' way of going, oh, wait, oh, no, wait, oh, we didn't do it. We didn't even know they were going to do it. These guys are wild cards. They're loose cannons. They're crazy. So, interesting. All right, let me give you the Ron Paul piece here. And I promised I would try to keep these videos to like 20 minutes or so, just so, you can digest them and not spend all day watching them. All right, this is Ron Paul. Opens up. Last week, the New York Times ran a shocking article claiming that the U.S. intelligence community believes the Ukrainian government to be responsible for the August attack that killed Darya Dugina, the daughter of a prominent Russian philosopher. So it's interesting the way one set of facts can be reported by 2 different philosophies. I mean, the New York Times would write that out such that an August attack that killed Darya Dugina, the ultra-nationalist journalist, stirring up trouble on behalf of her ultra-nationalist warmonger, her father, where Ron Paul writes it, the August attack that killed Darya Dugina, the daughter of a prominent Russian philosopher. So, back to Ron Paul. Surely the established narrative that Ukraine is a model Western democracy standing strong for her shared values against an aggressive Russian invader is damaged, with reporting that Kiev conducted an Al-Qaeda-style attack on an innocent civilian inside Russia. The murder of Dugina was a textbook definition of terrorism, which is, quote, the use of violence or the threat of violence, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political goals, unquote. Just over a month later, the Nord Stream pipelines have blown up, seemingly ending, at least in the near term, the possibility that Germany may find a way to save its economy by mending fences with its main energy supplier. A leading Polish politician thanked the U.S. for doing the job. Then over the weekend, the bridge connecting mainland Russia to Crimea was bombed, killing at least 6 civilians and leaving part of the bridge underwater. Traffic was restored hours after the attack, but Russian President Vladimir Putin placed the blame on Ukraine's intelligence service. We all know that Ukraine relies on its U.S. masters, so we can assume the U.S. provided the intelligence allowing the targeting of the bridge. That's probably true. Back to Ron Paul. There's a pattern here. More and more brazen attacks are being launched against Russia, and Washington is doing little to hide U.S. fingerprints. Why? The Biden administration seems to be moving us closer to nuclear war over Ukraine, and Biden himself seems to know it. Last week he said Putin, quote, is not joking when he talks about potential use of tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons, unquote. For the first time since human missile crisis, we have a direct threat of use of nuclear weapons if in fact things continue down the path they're going, unquote. That was all Biden. Back to Paul. So the question is, if he knows this is a proxy war against Russia is moving us closer to the unthinkable, nuclear annihilation, why does his administration persist in crossing red line after red line? Apparently Biden's experts believe that Putin is bluffing and will do nothing about the Dugina assassination, the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage, and the Kerch bridge attack. But what if they're wrong? I told you that 2 weeks ago. What if they're wrong? This is Paul spouting my thinking. So there you have that. What if they're wrong? Normally, foreign policy action should be weighed on a cost-benefit basis. Who told you that? Me. Will adopting one particular policy benefit the United States more than the risks involved? In this case, there's absolutely nothing on the positive side of the ledger. Will the security and prosperity of the United States benefit more from regime change in Russia than it would suffer should a nuclear war break out? It really doesn't seem all that hard. No. So what's going on here? Why does the U.S. administration, with the support of most Republicans in Congress, unfortunately he's right on that, continue to send tens of billions of dollars in military aid and move us towards nuclear war over a conflict that has nothing at all to do with the United States? The time to end U.S. participation in this war is yesterday, and if it takes millions of Americans in the streets peacefully protesting while demanding that the representatives stop this madness, then bring it on. Tomorrow may be too late. End of Ron Paul piece. Okay, let's unpack a lot of that there. Sadly, I don't see anyone running to the streets right now. You know, it's almost like, I think the Cuban Missile Crisis, and you'll have to ask your parents if they're still alive, what that was like. But I think that was a big deal to the American citizen, that they were nervous, that they were reading the newspapers, they were watching TV, that the president was on national TV like once a day. None of that's going on here. This is almost like the war that the world forgot, I guess, until the war jumps up and punches us in the face and says, hey, I'm here. I don't know. So I don't see millions of people taken to the streets. I mean, right now, I don't even know I can do anything at the ballot box. I know my U.S. representative is 100% warmonger. Chrissy Houlihan is a complete warmonger. She's horrible. I mean, she's just... I know that's redundant, a horrible Democrat. I'm thinking of a Democrat where I would have something positive to say. And Chrissy Houlihan is not that person. She is a reprobate. She's terrible. And she wants this war to keep going until, I guess, they get rid of Vladimir Putin, as if that's going to happen. But the guy running against her, he hasn't really said one way or the other. He just kind of, in fairness, if he said, I can, stop this idiotic money printing and we'll try to get control of inflation, well, all right, you already got my vote, so you'd get it even more, I think, if you said we're going to try to get out of this Ukrainian war. But he's afraid that still a majority of Americans want the war. Now, I don't think that's the case at all anymore. This thing's been going on for 7-8 months, and I think the majority of Americans are sick of it. I was there from the beginning, but I think most people have now come to my side and said, when does this end? Where's the off-ramp? What are we getting out of this? That's on the millions of people charging the streets. Now, what is the Biden administration getting out of this? I honestly think they could give a goddamn if nuclear weapons are used. I really think they could not care less. I guess they figure the chances of it hitting our country are probably small. If it's used over there, it probably directly affects the Ukrainians and maybe the people that live in Western Russia. It would probably impact the European economy worse than our economy. And if it did affect our economy, again, I don't think they give a shit because they're trying to crash the whole goddamn thing. The big reset is real. Now, what's that? The big reset, this is a term we've hung on the philosophy that they're trying to wreck the entire American system. Just break it into pieces, much like, say, I don't know, Russia went to pieces in 1916-17, much like China finally broke into pieces after World War II, allowing the communists to take over. That is what they're trying to do. If they can wreck our economy, think how much big government was advanced simply by the Great Depression. And that was 100 years ago, a little less. The country managed not to go full communist, but a lot of things were advanced in that time that didn't come to pass. The National Recovery Act, where the government basically took over all business in the United States. And they did such a terrible job of running them that the country rebelled and the Supreme Court threw it out, thank God. But they advanced all kind of big government precepts during that time. Now, with big government already, with not just its foot in the door, with its whole body in the doorway, if it could do another Great Depression, who knows what it could do? It could probably throw out the entire Constitution. The big reset is not some far-fetched philosophy. We're close to this. We are not far away from this being attempted. And this would be an easy way to kick that thing off if this Ukrainian war gets out of control. So I don't think they give one goddamn about stopping this war. If this thing escalates out of control, I think it serves their purposes perfectly well. That's who's running this country right now. You ought to think about that. So, anyway, I think we're at our time limit. I'm Eric Arnold. I believe in free speech. We'll see you probably tomorrow. All right, signing off.